Hey guys, welcome back to another video. Today we're going to be talking about if final form is worth waiting for. What I mean by that is there are certain situations where I find myself having burst up but not my final form up, either in the morph gauge or in final trans, my hyper skill. So I wondered if it is worth using the burst so that it could run off cooldown and continue to decrease the cooldown time while I wait for the final form, or if it's worth waiting for final form and using the burst with the final form. There are also situations where I wonder if final form is worth the hassle, like in phase 3 will, where our hitbox is a lot bigger than usual and we have to get hit a lot more by the spider legs and things of that sort just because of our big hitbox. And obviously, we get less moonlight from being hit a lot. So I did a few battle analysis. Basically, I did a minute of battle analysis, even though I basically should have just really stopped at 45 seconds. But I'll post screenshots of the 45 seconds in this video just to compare it. And essentially, with the 45 seconds battle analysis, I did a final form versus no final form. I didn't use Grandize Blessing for the burst because I wanted to limit the variables in this testing. As you know, Grandize Blessing has the ability to bypass skill cooldowns, which affect Tempest Blades, and that can give me quite a bit of damage if I bypass a lot. So one test I had final form on and I just used my main bursting skills, and then in the other test I did it without final form. Everything else I try to keep the same. I also did 1 minute of consistent damage just to see the charge time, so to speak, for final forms, something along the lines of using Tempest, using Wing Beat, and using Bladefall just to try to mimic the in-boss fight charging of final form and see how much damage I do while I'm charging the final form up. Just from seeing these screenshots right here, where in final form I am doing 8.7 trill worth of damage in 45 seconds versus without final form I am doing only 6.2 trill, which is a full 30% worth of difference. In other words, we're only doing 70% of our actual damage when we're bursting if we're not using final form. So that's a big issue, because if we're not doing 30% of our damage, then the fight is going to be longer. So in cases like phase 3 will, I noticed that some Kaisers don't like to transform in it, and it's good if you're capping already, because once you're capping, it really doesn't change much, and it makes no difference. But for most of us who are not capping, I think it is worth transforming into final form, even though our hitboxes are bigger. Because final form gives us a 30% more damage, essentially. Even though we get more time until full webs if we're not in final form, the damage that we do in that time is similar, if not less, than what the damage would be if we were in final form and we just got hit a tiny bit more because of our bigger hitbox. And I also try to do a real life boss fight and see if I can mimic the circumstances where I have to possibly burst off of final form and compare that with just bursting and waiting for final form before I start, bursting. And I guess fortunately or unfortunately, the results were not as expected. So in this Vihila phase 1 fight, I basically did quite a bit of damage. And the times where my final form was on cooldown and my burst was off cooldown, there was only about a 20-something second of duration where my final form is not up and my burst is up. So not 20-something seconds, and given. Vihala is definitely a lot easier to charge Morph Gauge due to her minion, so you also always have something to hit and target with your Tempest Blades and Infernal Breath. For something like Dark Knell, Lucid, you might not always have it, but depending on if she does lasers or not. But you also have Golem, so I would say this is not a too much of an off case where it takes about 30 seconds to charge your final form or 30 seconds for your actual final trance to run off cooldown, and then you can start bursting. And I think in those, and this is just purely guessing, making educated guess, just purely off of that, I think it is worth waiting for final form, whether it is charging it, whether it is waiting for the cooldown of the hyper before you start bursting, because you're still doing damage regardless if you're in final form or not with your regular skills. Of course, there are going to be instances where bursting off of final form might be ideal. For example, in phase 3 Heart of Will, when the whole map is masked up, so you really can't charge it fast enough and your cooldown doesn't run off fast enough. So in those cases, I think it's, definitely just burst off of the burst cooldown. But in other instances, I would say 95% of the time, it's definitely worth waiting for final form. If you're somewhat actively trying to charge it, it's going to charge pretty fast. And you're not going to be without final form for more than a minute. Special thanks to Kimono Tots, Joseph, for sponsoring this. No, I'm just playing. He didn't sponsor it, but he summoned the dojo dummies for me because God knows I never do dojo because I hate that. But, he helped me spawn 2 dummies so I can test this somewhat accurately, so special thanks to him. I also want to add another caveat to this because heavily dependent on your buff duration as well. So right now we have a lot of event skills that are giving a few good amounts of buff duration. For me, I have quite a bit of duration in the Legion grid, and I have quite a bit of duration in the inner ability as well. So for me, this is based off of those numbers, especially for the Vihala fight. It's based off of those conditions. For you, it might be slightly different, although I doubt it will be much. But anyways, I hope you guys found this video helpful, and be sure to subscribe if you haven't already, and check back in the future to get updated videos. I post videos every 3 days now, and I'll see you guys in the next one.